Let me tell you something most people are never meant to hear. Not because it's complicated, but because once you understand it, the world stops looking the same. All your life you've been told a comforting story, that people are rational, that honesty wins, that fairness eventually rewards the good. But if you've lived long enough, you've probably felt the cracks in that story, because behind the polite smiles, the motivational speeches and the rules everyone pretends to follow, there is another game being played. A colder one. 5 centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote about it with brutal clarity, not about how humans should behave, but how they actually behave when power, fear, ambition and survival enter the room. And the unsettling truth is this: the people who understand these rules rarely talk about them. They simply use them. In business, in politics, in relationships, every single day. In this video, I'm going to show you what most people spend their entire lives missing. I will help you see the hidden mechanics behind influence, loyalty, and control, so you stop being the piece on the board and start seeing the board itself. But before we go deeper, make sure you like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what you're about to learn changes the way you see every interaction from this moment forward. Now let's dissect Machiavelli's warning and why you were never supposed to know it. What if the biggest lie you were ever taught about people is that they are rational? You were raised to believe decisions come from logic, that people weigh options, compare outcomes, analyze facts, and choose what makes the most sense. It sounds civilized, predictable, almost comforting. But Machiavelli noticed something most people refuse to admit. Human beings rarely move toward truth. They move toward emotional safety. The mechanism is simple but brutal. Your mind has 2 layers. The emotional brain chooses first. The rational brain arrives later to justify the decision. Logic is not the driver. Logic is the lawyer defending what the emotions already decided. Look around your life and you'll see it everywhere. A friend sits across from you at dinner. "I don't understand why my relationship keeps failing," he says. You explain calmly the pattern, the disrespect, the obvious solution. He nods. He agrees with every word. 2 weeks later, he goes back to the same person who hurt him. Why? Because your argument attacked his comfort, and comfort will always defeat logic. Or the co-worker who constantly complains about being broke. He talks about inflation, unfair bosses, the economy. Then every morning he buys the same expensive coffee, the same takeout lunch, the same little indulgence that makes him feel momentarily in control. He doesn't want financial logic. He wants emotional relief. And once you see this mechanism, something unsettling becomes clear. This is why facts rarely change people's minds. Facts threaten identity. Feelings protect it. This is also why some people seem to command attention the moment they speak, not because they're the smartest in the room, but because they understand what the room is feeling. Fear, pride, insecurity, desire for status. They don't argue with logic, they speak to emotion. A politician doesn't win crowds with statistics. He tells a story about danger and safety. A brand doesn't sell you ingredients. It sells belonging, identity, lifestyle. Even in everyday arguments, the person who makes you feel understood often wins against the person who is technically correct. Old response. You're wrong. Here are the facts. Disciplined response. You're worried about losing control, aren't you? One attacks logic. The other touches emotion. And emotion is where decisions are actually made. Once you see this pattern, people start looking different. The confident speech, the excuses, the carefully curated image online. They are rarely about truth. They are about protecting how someone wants to feel about themselves. Truth line. People rarely choose what is right. They choose what protects their emotions. And once you understand that, a darker question appears. If emotion drives behavior, then the world is not ruled by reason. It is ruled by power. If people were truly rational, power would look very different, because logic would reward fairness. It would reward cooperation. It would reward the calm exchange of evidence. But that is not the world you live in. Look closely at human behavior, and a colder pattern appears. Not harmony, not balance. Selection. Machiavelli described it without decoration. When pressure rises, human systems sort themselves into two roles, those who impose conditions and those who adapt to them. In simpler terms, predators and prey. This is not about cruelty. It is about gravity. Power moves towards strength, and weakness becomes visible long before anyone says it out loud. Think back to school. Why did bullies rarely choose the loud kid who pushed back? Why did they circle the quiet one who avoided eye contact? The bully wasn't reading moral character. He was reading signals, hesitation, fear, uncertainty. The body reveals what the mouth tries to hide. The same mechanism operates in adulthood, just dressed in suits and polite language. In an office meeting, two people present ideas. One explains nervously, constantly apologizing over clarifying every detail. Sorry if this isn't perfect. Maybe this could work. I'm not completely sure. The other speaks calmly. This is the direction I recommend. Both may have identical competence, but the room reacts differently, because authority is perceived before it is proven. Predators in any system follow the path of least resistance. Companies cut the most replaceable employee first. Social groups test the boundaries of the most agreeable person first. Even in relationships, people instinctively lean toward the individual who seems grounded in their own standards. This is the hidden cruelty Machiavelli warned about. Weakness doesn't only fail to protect you, it attracts pressure, because weakness sends a signal to every surrounding system. Here is where rules can bend. And here is the twist most people never notice. Weakness rarely harms only the person who carries it. It changes the behavior of everyone around them. A leader who avoids difficult decisions forces the entire team into chaos. A partner who refuses to set boundaries invites disrespect that spreads through the relationship. A friend who tolerates everything eventually becomes the person everyone unconsciously takes from. Weakness is contagious. This is why Machiavelli wrote something that still makes people uncomfortable today. If you cannot be both loved and feared, it is safer to be feared. Not because fear is noble, but because fear creates boundaries. Love without strength invites testing. Respect with strength creates distance, and that distance protects stability. Truth line. The world does not punish weakness out of cruelty. It punishes it because systems move towards strength, which leads to the next uncomfortable realization. If power responds to strength, then the advice you were given about being nice may have quietly placed you on the wrong side of the game. Here's a question most people never dare to ask. What if being nice was never the virtue you were told it was? From childhood, you were given a simple formula: be agreeable, be polite, avoid conflict, make everyone comfortable. Do this, and people will like you. And if people like you, the world will reward you. It sounds moral, but Machiavelli would say it's dangerously incomplete, because nice is often misunderstood. Nice is not goodness. Nice is conflict avoidance. It is the instinct to smooth tension, to say what people want to hear, to sacrifice your position so harmony can survive another day. The psychological mechanism behind it is approval seeking. When your identity depends on being liked, you begin negotiating against yourself before anyone else even challenges you, and people sense this immediately. Think about a simple interaction at work. A colleague pushes your responsibility onto you at the last minute. The old response looks like this: "It's okay, I'll handle it." No problem. You smile. You absorb the inconvenience. You tell yourself you're being cooperative. But what the other person learns is something very different. They learn your boundaries are flexible. Next time the pressure appears, your name becomes the easiest solution again. Now, contrast that with controlled restraint. I can't take that on today. You'll need to handle it. Calm voice, no hostility, no apology. Same situation. Completely different signal. One response asks for approval. The other establishes respect. This is the insight most people miss. Humans do not measure your worth by your intentions. They measure it by the standards you enforce. That's why the nice guy often ends up invisible in relationships. Not because kindness is unattractive, but because kindness without firmness signals insecurity. When someone always adapts to keep the peace, their presence stops shaping the environment around them. And influence requires shape. Look at leaders throughout history. The ones remembered as strong were not endlessly agreeable. They could be generous, yes, but generosity came after authority was clear. Even today, the executives who lead companies, the coaches who command teams, the individuals who hold social gravity, none of them survive by pleasing everyone. They survive by being internally anchored. They decide their standards first, and approval becomes secondary. Goodness is not weakness. Real goodness is disciplined strength. It means you can act with fairness without needing validation from every observer in the room. Truth line. People may appreciate kindness, but they follow strength. And once you stop chasing approval, another illusion starts to crumble. Because the moment you step out of the role of the agreeable one, you begin to notice something uncomfortable about loyalty itself. What if loyalty isn't the unbreakable bond you were promised? You were taught to treat loyalty like sacred ground. Stand by your friends. Stay faithful to your company. Never abandon the people who once stood beside you. It sounds noble, and sometimes it is. But Machiavelli observed something colder. Loyalty is rarely permanent. It is conditional. The hidden mechanism is reciprocity. Most relationships operate like quiet contracts. As long as both sides benefit, the bond survives. The moment the balance disappears, the loyalty begins to dissolve. You can see it in everyday life. A coworker calls you constantly when he needs help finishing deadlines. You spend evenings assisting him, covering his mistakes, answering his questions. Months pass. Then one day you need a favor in return. Suddenly, he is busy, slow to reply, hard to find. Nothing dramatic happened. The contract simply expired on his side. The same pattern appears in friendships. The friend who disappears when life becomes inconvenient. The business partner who praises teamwork during success but vanishes when risk arrives. Even in relationships, promises often survive only while emotional benefits remain high. Old response. But we've known each other for years. Loyalty should mean something. Disciplined response, silence, observation, and distance. Because real power lies in recognizing the structure beneath the words. Loyalty is not proven in comfort. It is revealed under pressure. Anyone can stand beside you during calm seasons. The real test happens when standing beside you costs something. This is why powerful individuals treat loyalty differently. They do not give it blindly, and they do not beg for it in return. They observe behavior, they measure consistency, and they understand that loyalty is a living agreement, not a permanent guarantee. Think of it like walking beside a wolf, not owning a dog. The wolf walks with you because the path still benefits both of you. The moment the path changes, the relationship must be re-evaluated. That perspective may sound harsh, but it creates clarity. Instead of clinging to promises, you begin watching actions. Instead of chasing loyalty, you cultivate standards that naturally attract those who respect them. Because the most dangerous mistake a man can make is continuing to invest loyalty where none is returned. That is not honor. That is surrender. Truth line loyalty without reciprocity becomes exploitation. And once you see that truth, another layer of the game reveals itself. If loyalty shifts, if alliances change, then something else must protect a man's position in the world. Something more durable than promises. Something called reputation. If loyalty can shift, then what actually protects a man when the ground moves beneath him? Machiavelli's answer was unsettlingly simple: reputation, not who you are, what people believe you are. The hidden mechanism here is perception. Human beings rarely experience the full truth of someone. They interact with signals, tone of voice, past stories, confidence, consistency. From those fragments, they build a mental image, and that image becomes your reputation. Once formed, it begins acting before you even enter the room. Think about two employees walking into the same meeting. One has a reputation for competence. The other is known for excuses. They say the same sentence: "I think we should change the strategy." The room reacts differently. One suggestion feels decisive. The other feels suspicious. Nothing about the words changed, only the reputation behind them. This is why Machiavelli warned that appearance carries immense power. People see the surface first, and most never look deeper. Not because they are foolish, but because the brain conserves energy. Reputation allows people to make fast judgments without constant analysis. History is full of this phenomenon. Alexander the Great didn't only conquer with armies, he cultivated the myth that he was unstoppable. Long before battle began, his enemies were already questioning their chances. Perception weakened resistance before swords ever crossed. You see the same dynamic in modern life. Some leaders walk into a negotiation and the entire room shifts. Investors listen more carefully. Competitors hesitate. Employees align faster. Not because that person explains more, but because their reputation frames every word they speak. Old response: "Let me explain who I really am." Disciplined response: consistent actions that shape what others assume about you. The difference is enormous. One approach tries to repair perception through explanation. The other builds perception slowly through repeated signals: competence, restraint, reliability. And here's the difficult truth: once reputation fractures, rebuilding it becomes painfully slow. A single visible failure can outweigh years of quiet discipline, because the mind remembers negative signals more strongly than positive ones. That's why those who understand power guard their reputation carefully, not through deception, but through selective exposure. They reveal enough to inspire confidence, but not every doubt, every fear, every internal struggle. Because the world doesn't respond to the complexity inside you. It responds to the pattern it can observe. Truth line: your reputation speaks before you do. And yet, even reputation can't eliminate conflict entirely, because where status exists, competition inevitably follows. Which leads to Machiavelli's next warning: peace is rarely permanent. It is only the quiet moment before the next contest begins. Most people believe conflict is an exception, something unfortunate that occasionally interrupts normal life. Machiavelli saw the opposite. Conflict is the background condition of every system. Sometimes it is loud, often it is silent, but it is always present. The hidden mechanism is competition for limited space, status, resources, influence, attention. Whenever those things exist, pressure follows. And pressure eventually reveals who prepared and who assumed peace would last forever. Look at any environment closely. In your career, someone is quietly studying the position you hold, not necessarily with hatred, but with interest. If the opportunity appears, they will step forward. In social groups, people constantly test boundaries to see how far they can push without resistance. Even in relationships, stability depends on mutual respect, and respect fades quickly when strength disappears. This doesn't mean life must become paranoid or hostile. It means understanding the nature of the field you're standing on. Old response: Everything is fine. I'll deal with problems when they appear. Disciplined response, quiet preparation, long before the pressure arrives. The professional who continues learning when his job feels secure. The man who maintains his health when no crisis threatens him. The person who saves money when income is stable instead of waiting for hardship to teach discipline. These are not acts of fear. They are acts of awareness. Machiavelli used a famous comparison, the lion and the fox. The lion has strength but can fall into traps. The fox can recognize traps but lacks the force to defend itself. Survival belongs to the one who learns both instincts, awareness, and strength. Too many people choose only one. Some become clever observers who never act. Others rely purely on force and ignore the dangers forming around them. The balanced individual sees early and acts decisively when necessary. And here is the paradox most people never notice. The individual who appears ready for conflict often avoids it entirely, because visible preparation changes how others calculate risk. Predators rarely pursue the hardest target. They search for the easiest one. So readiness becomes its own form of protection. Quiet discipline, financial stability, emotional composure, physical strength, strategic thinking. These signals change how the world interacts with you before any confrontation even begins. You are not preparing because you want conflict. You prepare so that when it appears, as it inevitably does, you are not surprised by it. Truth line. The man who prepares during peace rarely panics during war. And once you understand that, another realization settles in quietly. The world is not controlled by fairness, loyalty, or good intentions alone. It is shaped by perception, strength, discipline, and the ability to see human nature clearly, exactly the warning Machiavelli tried to leave behind. Now you see the truth most people spend their lives avoiding. Human behavior is not guided by pure logic. It is guided by perception, emotion, and consequence. You will notice it in ordinary moments. A meeting where someone questions your decision and you feel the urge to explain everything. A conversation where someone misunderstands you and you want to correct the image in their mind. The instinct rises quickly. Defend yourself. Clarify. Prove you are right. Inside, the pressure builds. Silence feels uncomfortable. Restraint feels risky. But when you hold that silence, the dynamic changes. The room studies you. People reveal more than they planned. Motives surface. Confidence becomes visible without a single extra word. This is where the shift happens. You stop reacting to every signal around you. You start choosing your response with discipline. Noise fades, clarity remains. What once felt like pressure becomes control over your own behavior. This is not manipulation. It is self-command. If this perspective gave you clarity, subscribe and leave 2 words in the comments: silent strength. Because once you see how perception and power truly move between people, you cannot return to the old illusion.